Hi, it's the 1st of March and I've decided to do another video update after ages, probably a couple of months. I've been very sick recently and I asked some friends to post questions I could answer in this video just to help make myself do a video. Feeling a bit better now, but anyway, I'll go through the questions. So my friend Tyler asked how the doctors choose chemotherapy for me and what kind of say I have in it. So I've just started chemotherapy again after about 6 months of no chemo. So my previous chemotherapy stopped working and I had a massive liver surgery. The surgeon took about half my liver and also gallbladder. And then I was okay for a while, and then the scans showed that there's a lot of cancer again. So I've been talking to various doctors, trying to find what I can do, and basically as cancer gets worse and worse for you, then there are fewer and fewer treatment options, and the treatment options tend to have less chance of working, and also side effects are worse. So the oncologist will try and give you the best chemotherapy at first. When you have chemotherapy, you become resistant to that chemotherapy, but you also become slightly resistant to chemotherapy in general. Sadly, the most effective chemotherapies usually have the worst side effects. So I'm now on kind of what's called third-line chemotherapy, so I've become resistant to two others that I've tried. In fact, I've been resistant to multiple other chemotherapies. So this time it was recommended that I try to use 2 different chemotherapy drugs plus a molecular targeted therapy. So I'm taking a chemotherapy drug called irinotecan. I think it's an enzyme that stops cells dividing, and also taking a drug called Avastin, which I'm resistant to. Avastin stops cancer cells making new blood supplies, or stops cancer tumours making new blood supplies. I'm resistant to Avastin. I had it for quite a while, and the reason to continue using it is because it can make holes in cancer cells, so the other chemo should get in, or more of the other chemo should get in. And those 2 drugs I'm having is a drip, so I go to hospital and spend a day in hospital, have those 2 drugs as a drip, and I go home, and then for 14 days I take chemotherapy tablets every day, so 10 tablets a day. I'm taking tablets called Xeloda, and Xeloda, when you eat it, it gets broken down in your body and changes to a drug called 5-FU. So I have to have that for 14 days, and I get a 1-week break after that, and then back to hospital for another day of drips. And I've been told to do 6 of these cycles and then have another scan, so 18 weeks of chemo, and then have a scan and see if the cancer has stopped growing. So Tyler asked kind of what say do I have in my treatment. In a way, my treatment is completely up to me. In Japan, we can go to any hospital we like. Just turn up, make an appointment, and you see a oncologist directly, so it's not like in the UK where to get access to what's called a consultant level doctor is a bit tricky. They've got a secretary in the way and that kind of thing. In Japan, you just make an appointment, and even the top level surgeons, you can just go and make an appointment with them. And yeah, it's up to me what treatment I have. On the other hand, I'm really running out of options. I've got cancer in 4 places in my body now, according to the scan. So it's in my right lung. There's a lung tumour that is growing. It's now a tumour in my liver again. There are tumours in my lymph nodes, in my abdomen. So they're called para-aortic lymph nodes, which means where the aorta kind of goes down from the heart towards the legs, the lymph nodes around that. It's not a good place to have cancer because it can spread very easily from there, and it tends to spread upwards. And then the 4th place that I've got cancer is still on the membrane that covers my abdomen. So you've got a sort of double layer membrane called the peritoneum, and there's cancer there as well. So at the moment I don't have a lot of choice in what I do. Yeah, so I can't see myself completing 6 cycles of this. I may be able to manage another cycle. The side effects have been very tough. I'm okay now, even though I'm still taking these 10 chemo tablets every day. I've got, I think, 5 or 6 more days of that before the 1-week break. So, because I'm okay now, that kind of suggests that the terrible week and a bit I had was caused by the irinotecan and the Avastin. So I'm going to see some more doctors and see if there are any other options of other treatment. So my friend David asked, how is this treatment, how's this chemo different to the one I had before? So the previous chemo I was on was a drip of 5-FU. So I'd go to hospital and have a drip of this drug 5-FU, which is the kind of standard chemotherapy drug for bowel cancer. And they had a little, a small amount of that in the hospital and some other drugs to make it work better. And then I'd go home, but before I left the hospital I'd be attached to this thing called a pump, which I had to wear for 46 hours, sometimes more like 50 hours if the weather was cold, and that was dripping the chemotherapy drug into my blood at the rate of about, I think it's 3 milliliters an hour. So they kind of give me this drug that I'd have over a 2-day period, can't take it off. It's attached with a needle stuck in my chest. But also in the hospital I was given another drip, a drug called Erbitux, which is a molecular targeted therapy and which caused a horrific skin rash. Still having skin trouble now, even though I haven't had that drug for 6 months. So the current chemotherapy I'm on, even though the side effects are very, very severe for the sort of week after the drip in hospital, at least it's not giving me that terrible skin rash. My friend Edward asked, when will I know if it's working? And I'll basically know next time I go to hospital. I'll have an indication, which is that I'll have a blood test and the doctors track things called tumour markers. So I'm tracking a couple of tumour markers, CA19-9 and CEA. And if the numbers are not going up dramatically, that means the chemotherapy is probably helping a bit. My cancer is very late stage, so it's expected that it's just going to grow and grow, and I'm going to die relatively soon, I think. But this chemo has really kind of slowed down the spread of cancer a bit. If I can slow it down a bit, stop it getting to my bones too quickly, then my quality of life for whatever time I have left is going to be much better. Yeah, so I should be able to know with a blood test, and then hopefully if I can continue the chemotherapy for a few more cycles, then have a scan, then the scan will show either hopefully just a little bit of new growth, or that the tumours are stable. Yeah, it would be upsetting if they show a whole new area of cancer, but that's obviously likely at this stage because, yeah, there are very few treatments available to me. So my friend Arka asked which tumours are being targeted by this treatment, by which treatments. Well, this treatment I'm having is systemic, so it's not targeted at all. So it will, there's four areas of cancer, and it should help possibly with 3 of them, which is the lung, liver, and lymph nodes. Systemic treatment doesn't really work for the membrane on the abdomen because the blood supply is so poor. Chemotherapy agent just doesn't really get in. If I can somehow survive 3, 4, 5 cycles of this, then I'd look. It might be worth looking at targeted treatment. So that the targeted treatment I'm looking at is radiation or surgery for the lung tumour. The lung tumour is like the least of the problems at the moment because it's growing slowly and it's still quite small. But yeah, I'm tempted to have surgery for that. What's called a wedge resection, so they just cut a chunk of the lung out, so not having to remove like a huge bit of it. Or possibly radiation for the lung is another option. And then radiation for the lymph nodes, but I'm not sure if that's possible, clinically possible, because I had proton beam therapy for my liver, and although that's very, very targeted, the radiation treatment for the lymph nodes would be done in 2 approaches. So one would be targeting the lymph nodes that are showing up as cancerous, but then there'd be another sequence of radiation treatments of a much larger area called a prophylactic area treatment, something like that. So that would be to try and get rid of some of the unseen cancer in that area, but that can't overlap the area treated by proton beam therapy, because if you get too much total dose of radiation in a tissue area, you're going to get more cancer tumours forming there. And then for the liver, I'm looking at radiofrequency ablation, which is where a radiologist usually, or a liver surgeon, depending on the hospital, sticks a device into the tumour or tumours and heats up the tumours to ablation temperatures, which are basically temperatures that destroy human tissue. It's heated using radiofrequency, which is why it's called radiofrequency ablation, or MFA, microwave frequency ablation. Depending on the tumour, in my case it would probably be microwave frequency ablation because the tumour is quite close to the portal vein in the liver. MFA should work better in that case. And yeah, that treatment would try and destroy the tissue. I could have that for the lung tumour as well. It's not covered by Japanese health insurance, so it might be a bit expensive, but that's something I could look into. If I have the lung tumour treated with radiofrequency ablation, then it's probably an 80% chance that that treatment would get rid of that tumour. With a tumour of this size, surgery is probably 100% effective, very close to 100% effective for this size tumour in my lung. So more tempted to go for lung surgery, though I don't generally agree with surgery for cancer, despite the fact, well, possibly because I've had it twice. So those are potential targeted treatments. That really depends on getting through some more cycles of chemo, which I feel is unlikely at the moment. I don't know if I can really continue this chemo. My friend Edward also asked what my kids understand of my situation and how they kind of adapt to it. My daughter doesn't understand anything other than I'm sick. She's 5, my son is 10. So my son kind of understands that I'm in a very, very, very serious situation. I'm probably not going to live much longer. Looking at months, not years, really. Well, yeah, definitely months, not years. They both adapt relatively well, I guess, to my treatment. So fortunately, because of my family situation, that my son doesn't go to school, I teach him at home. My daughter goes to kindergarten in the mornings. That's 5 minutes walk from my house. So everything's pretty flexible in my family, really. So we don't, the treatment doesn't cause many logistical problems. Huge financial problems, but logistical problems are minimal. So yeah, I try really hard not to let my treatment interfere with their lives. I guess the main thing that affects them is when I have chemotherapy and I come home from hospital, I'm then kind of incapacitated. Well, at the moment it's incapacitated for about a week or 9 days or whatever after chemo. And yeah, all the time, just things are difficult because of the treatment. So most days I'm feeling quite bad or very bad. Just in terms of having no energy to do anything with because of the fatigue from the chemotherapy, being irritable all the time, being in quite a lot of pain. Most days I'm in varying amounts of pain because of as a result of the surgery I had a couple of years ago. So yeah, daily life is kind of a bit of a struggle for me, and that kind of must affect the kids. But yeah, they're both kind of robust. and pretty helpful. It's difficult for my son to understand that sometimes serious stuff is happening and there's no leeway, there's no freedom of movement. It's just I have to be at the hospital at a certain day and time, or I've come back from hospital and I cannot do anything for a few days, and that's kind of an absolute. Children find it very, very difficult to understand absolutes anyway. So yeah, I guess hopefully that answers that question. My friend Susannah asked about what happens when I get to see medical students. So I'm always asking the hospitals, I'd like to talk to medical students, and yeah, sometimes I get a chance to meet them. At my previous hospital, just a kind of an old teaching hospital here, my oncologist was a very kind of senior, respected oncologist in Japan. He would always have medical students sitting in with his sessions. And I would talk to them as much as possible, although, yeah, there were things I wanted to say to them that I couldn't really say while he was there, such as chemotherapy is fundamentally a bad treatment. So yeah, that's one of the things I do say whenever I have a chance. Is I try and tell the medical students that this oncology is not fit for purpose. The treatments, chemotherapy in particular, is not good. It's not a good treatment. It's not okay. It's just not a proper way to treat people, and it's based on bad science. So interestingly, at the new hospital, I recently got a really great opportunity to talk to a senior doctor who is a specialist in palliative care. So that's palliative oncology rather. So she is working to find ways to help patients in the end stages of their life with cancer, and help them minimize side effects of treatment, increase quality of life, that kind of thing. So I was talking to her, and two pharmacologists came and sat in, and they were asking me questions about what it's like to be dying of cancer, and cultural differences between medical care in the UK and in Japan, this kind of thing. And we talked for quite a while, and I explained to the pharmacologists the fundamental problem with chemotherapy, which is that when chemotherapy was developed, it was believed that the immune system couldn't really challenge cancer in any meaningful way, and that was not a stupid thing to believe, and therefore the focus was on the testing was done on mice without immune systems, called the nude mouse model, which is very, very common in medical testing. And so chemotherapy is essentially the use of poisons to try and stop cancer growing, possibly shrink cancer, and the whole methodology of chemotherapy is this concept of MTD, maximum tolerable dose. So how much poison can you give to the patient without them dying? And because these things are very toxic, that's why chemotherapy is always given in a cycle. So a cycle means treatment and non-treatment. So it means having some chemotherapy, having some rest. Maybe having several chemotherapy drugs, maybe having things with the chemotherapy to try and make it work better. So you're giving these rests, and of course the rests are a really big problem because that allows the cancer to rebound. You know, the cancer is attacked by the chemotherapy. Depending on the type of chemo agent, it might might stop cell division at various points of the cell cycle, might damage the DNA, whatever. And that works very well, and then you have a rest when you can't take any more chemo. And particularly it's believed that in that rest period, it's a good time for the cancer tumours to grow new blood supply. So cancer, a lot of the issue is that cancers are growing, they need more blood. There are various ways to get more blood supplies. They can send out these growth factors to cause angiogenesis, which is when new blood supplies grow. If that doesn't work, they can actually make their own blood supplies. So cancer cells can actually turn into the kind of cells for blood supplies. If that doesn't work, the cancer can kind of make itself into a funny shape to maximize its exposure to blood. Cancer cells can actually form channels in the tumours to get blood in. They have a lot of ways of getting hold of blood. So I was talking to the pharmacologists about this, and I was saying, you know, with other medicines, you're really looking what's the MED, minimum effective dose, and with chemo it's maximum tolerable dose. And actually, in the last few years, it's been found that for a lot of medicines, the doses are calculated incorrectly. Particularly cancer drugs, the doses are incorrectly calculated. There's been some work in the US, I forget, it's maybe Santa Fe Institute for Advanced Research or something, has been looking into how drug doses are calculated by scaling up the dose from mice. So you calculate this dose and you do a trial, and there's no incentive. When you found the patients can tolerate this dose and it gives a good clinical effect, it may be the cancer tumours don't grow, or maybe they even shrink. Maybe the average life, median overall survival increases. There's no incentive to then do a trial to see if you can get the same results with less drug. There's no incentive for that, because the trials are mainly done by drug companies. In most countries, it seems that drugs are charged for by amount of drug, not by kind of treatment. So, if you have a patient who has a certain amount of chemotherapy drug, the hospital or government or health authority or patient themselves is kind of essentially paying per milliliter of that drug. There's no incentive at all to kind of see what happens if you reduce dose. Now, if you reduce the dose a bit, that that could be massively significant for the patient. And very interesting with cancer drugs, it seems that if you do very low doses, but don't give the patient breaks, kind of give low doses, but low dose of drug every day, this so-called metronomic chemotherapy, sometimes the results can be incredible. So the patient can get kind of a similar benefit to high-dose chemotherapy, but at doses that are below the threshold where you get most of the side effects. Now, you still get damage to the body. Chemotherapy always damages your heart and liver. You get kind of cross-links forming between the fibres in your heart and liver, this thing called fibrosis, so the tissue becomes hard, and that's not good. So that's the kind of thing I talk to medical students and anyone who will listen at the hospitals. And it was amazing to be talking to these two pharmacologists, because the instant that I, this is all obviously stuff that they learn in medical school about maximum tolerable dose for chemotherapy versus minimum effective dose for other medicines. But yeah, they were just blown away by it. My friend Susannah also said, asked kind of what surprises them. And again, in this conversation I had with these pharmacologists and this palliative care oncologist, the palliative care oncologist was saying, could I come to a seminar she's organising later this year and talk to a group of medical students about my experiences with terminal cancer. She said, could you talk about your side effects from the treatment and your pain from the cancer? And the three of them were very, very surprised when I said, in 2.5 years, as far as I know, I've not had any cancer symptom. All of the pain, all of the suffering has come from the treatment, not the cancer. Now, that would change very rapidly if I stopped the treatment. So, over the past 6 months, for example, I haven't had chemotherapy, but I've been having heat treatment to try and damage the cancer cells, make it hard for them to grow, make them more visible to the immune system. So when you heat cells up to what are called fever temperatures, on the surface of the cancer cell, you get these various proteins forming called heat shock proteins, and actually I think they form inside the cell and then move on to the outside of the cell, and these can be targeted by the NK cells, which type of white blood cell. So for the past 6 months, I've been having that treatment basically almost every week. 3 times a day, I take a drug called metformin, which is aimed at increasing the visibility of the cancer cells to the immune system, and also making the immune system more active, so making the white blood cells more able to recognize and attack the cancer. That's also an anti-aging drug, which is good because there's some belief that it might reverse some of the damage that the chemo has done to me over the 2 years I had chemo. So these two pharmacologists and the oncologist were kind of surprised to hear that all my trouble, all my agony comes from the treatments. Now, of course, they they knew that obviously on an intellectual level because, for something like colon cancer, when you get serious symptoms from that, you're going to live a very, very short time. The liver, for example, with cancer in the liver, you're not going to see effects from that until it's taken over the vast majority of your liver. The liver is human liver is so powerful, so overpowered for the body. Liver is the second biggest organ after the skin, and it's unique it's unique in several ways, but it's one way reason it's unique is that it regenerates, so it can put up with a lot of damage before you notice anything. So that was I think that was surprising for them on an emotional level, to have a patient just say to them, all my pain and suffering comes from treatment, not from cancer. If I stop the treatment, then when the cancer gets into bones and stuff, very very different. You're going to be getting inability to walk, a lot of pain. If you have cancer tumours pushing against nerves, that kind of thing. If you get cancer spreading a lot through your intestines, you get obstructions. So the intestines get narrow, just physically because the tumour's there, and that's fatal. But a long time before it's fatal, you need to be on essentially zero fibre diet, and you're going to get nasty internal bleeding and that kind of thing. So that's kind of answered all the questions, really. Really, really appreciate the questions. I wouldn't have been able to do a video without them. I've been really, really struggling with this chemo, so having questions to answer just makes everything 1,000 times easier. Please write a question in the comments so I can do another video, and please hit subscribe. That makes a massive difference. Also, hi Cindy, another cancer patient who found me, and she's been sharing some of my videos online, and really appreciate that. And Cindy, I hope you are doing okay. Please get in touch and let's Skype. Okay, thanks a lot.